What's up, everybody? It's your boy Charles on World. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. You checking out Original Gangsters on Audible. Go ahead and check out this audio book. It is talking about the West Coast 90s hip hop, the early days of hip hop. It's written by Ben Wallstoff. So check it out, guys, on Audible. We're gonna go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna come back with my reaction. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to Charles World.
During his jail sentence, Dre had begun to reassess his priorities. When I got sentenced, my mom told me that jail was going to turn out to be a blessing in disguise. And she was right, Dre said. It made me realize the value of my life and just how many things I needed to change. In early 1996, not long after his sentence was completed, Dre stunned the rap world by announcing he'd left death row. It turned into a fucking Don Corleone thing, Dre said. I got tired of seeing engineers get their ass beat for rewinding a tape too far. Reggie Wright Jr. told me that Suge wanted Dre to stay at death row, despite, like Tupac, having loudly criticized him to other label members for not attending Snoop's murder trial. But Suge insisted publicly that he was glad to see Dre go. It helped that Dre gifted his portion of the company away to Suge. His share was worth millions, but Dre walked away from it in favor of something far more valuable to him. You can't put a price on a peaceful state of mind, he said. The divorce was nonetheless contested in other ways. Just as he'd allegedly done at Eazy-E's house, Suge reportedly showed up at Dre's Calabasas home, demanding master tapes from Dre that Suge said he needed for a Death Row Greatest Hits album. According to Suge, Dre cowered inside while an off-duty cop answered the door. In Dre's version, Suge was only let past the guards after claiming to be Jimmy Iovine and had 8 or 9 motherfuckers with him. Dre put him off by telling him the tapes were being copied, but it helped perpetuate a feud between the two men that would continue for decades, despite the fact that, only 5 years before, they joined forces to found Death Row. Director Michel'le Savage, who made the documentary Welcome to Death Row, compares the saga surrounding Suge and Dre to Othello. There was Iago, who was in the trenches as a soldier with Othello, and at some point seized the need to usurp him, he said. I always looked at Suge as Iago and Dre as Othello. They were soldiers in arms during that critical period. Perhaps the oddest part about Dre and Suge's relationship is that they have children with the same woman, former Ruthless Records hitmaker, Michel'le. She and Dre began dating in 1987 and were together on and off until around 1995. After which time she linked up with Suge. She wasn't aware of Dre and Suge's feud until after she became involved with the latter, she said, although according to Reggie Wright Jr., her coupling with Suge contributed to Dre's decision to leave Death Row. As she tells it, Dre's infidelities practically drove her into Suge's arms. I felt like you treat people like you want to be treated, Michel'le told me in 2015. She added that she was initially scared of Suge.
She was doing that. She was trying to do that to be spiteful because Dre was cheating on her. So I'm gonna have to keep Suge. Suge been looking at me too. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it at her. She was doing that to be nasty.
But he won her over by standing up for her. After Dre would cheat on her, and Suge encountered the offending woman at, say, a club or a video shoot, he'd expunge her from the premises, she said. There were hiccups. He and Michel'le planned to wed, but he neglected to mention he was still married to Sharitha Golden, then known as Sharitha Knight. Michel'le said he told her he was divorced and even showed her preliminary paperwork. But in fact, the divorce had not yet gone through. He was incarcerated for much of the time they were together, and their daughter was born when he was still behind bars. Michel'le had very little independence. I was a princess in a castle who didn't get to come out that often.
What?
She said that Suge's control caused her to give up singing for many years, and that she attempted suicide around 2013. When Marcel, her son with Dre, was young, she feared he would get caught up in the feud between Dre and Suge. And so, to prevent this from happening, she said, she abdicated his care to her mother and her grandmother. I didn't connect to my son again, honestly, until he was about 14 or 15, she told me. In 2002, Michel'le and Suge had a daughter named Michel'le. The two kids get along great. People think they should be the Hatfields and McCoys, she said. No, my kids love each other. She has long insisted that Suge and Dre are responsible, caring dads. They are great fathers, and they are there for them. It's not always monetary. It's about being there. When we meet up in the lobby of a Koreatown hotel in July 2015, I don't immediately recognize Michel'le. I expected an entourage, but she's alone, and at 44, extraordinarily beautiful. Her manager said our interview would have to be in person because, though she sounds normal on record, her impossibly high, squeaky speaking voice wouldn't translate over the phone. Indeed, she has the register of Betty Boop. We talk about her childhood. Her parents weren't alcoholics or drug addicts and didn't abuse her, she says, but they were never together as a couple and never told her they loved her. Truth is, she can't remember much about her early days. I don't know where we lived and what we did because there's no history. My mother just isn't that type of person. Her memory comes into focus for her in her teen years. At 15, she began dating a local big-shot drug dealer, though he never took her on dates. He'd come over around 11 p.m., they'd watch The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, and then he'd leave. But he would give me all this jewelry, necklaces, rings. I had rings on every finger, she said. Eventually, she realized she wasn't his main girl. It was all part of a pattern. If someone paid lip service to caring about her, she'd tolerate most anything else, she told me. The attraction to Dre and Suge was that they told her they loved her. Even after they beat you, or whatever they do. In the NWA saga, countless women have come and gone. Michel'le's story is different, and not simply because of her relationships with Dre and Suge. She remembers her early days with Ruthless as some of the best of her life. She's a survivor, and in many ways, she won. She can still sing her ass off. She released her second album in 1998 on Death Row called Hung Jury, and her show business career took on a new life in her 40s, starring since 2013 on the reality show R&B Divas, Los Angeles. At the time I interview her, she's arguably as famous as she's ever been. Aftermath. The year 1996 was the major turning point year in Andre Young's life. He married his girlfriend, Nicole Threat.
Yeah, that is an excerpt from Original Gangsters. You know what? Michel'le, to me, she's very pretty. You know, I've always thought I had a crush on her when I was a kid. But she's kind of, I hate to say it, she's kind of a dingbat. She's kind of, you know, and she try to act like she don't know what she's doing, but she's slick. She was doing that to get back at Dre, you know. And when I was hearing, she was trying to throw it at Tupac too, you know. So, poor girl. Yeah, I don't think she got them all, you know. Like, well, if you try to kill yourself, you ain't got them all. I hate to say it, you know, at that point, if you're thinking about, can you try to kill? Come on, people think about it, but if you actually go into motion of doing it, it's time to get help. And you know what I'm saying, God bless her. Listen, what do y'all think about Original Gangsters? You can check it on Audible. It's written by Ben Westhoff. And you know what y'all think in the comments. Subscribe to Charles on there as well.